Welcome to the Collaborative. I'm your host, Sydnee Walker. Today we are joined by Mallom Liggon. He serves as Executive Director of Consumer Insights and Strategy for TNT Sports. In this role, he is responsible for providing key insights that allow departments to connect to fans and have the fans connect back to them. Prior to his current role, Mallom worked in marketing for NBA on TNT. Widely respected, he has more than 25 years of experience and influence within marketing and insights. He holds a bachelor's from New York Institute of Technology and a master's in business administration from Georgia Tech. Welcome.
Welcome.
So first up, we have Sid's This or That Food Edition. I'll give you some options and you'll tell me your preference and why.
Let's make it happen.
First up, Chick-fil-A or Zaxby's?
Chick-fil-A. I think I like the fries at Chick-fil-A, and I also like breakfast food. So Chick-fil-A has breakfast food. I miss their oatmeal.
I'm going with Zaxby's on this one. Waffle House or IHOP?
Waffle House. I think IHOP's fallen off. Although I'll say this, I'm 56, so I now get the senior citizen discount at IHOP. So
I'm going with Waffle House too. IHOP has definitely fallen off the last few years.
yes, for sure.
American Deli or Wingstop?
American Deli, so I can get the veggie fried rice. And then they'll do what do they call it? They'll do lemon pepper wet, some red American Deli. I'll let you customize a little bit. So
I'm going with American Deli too. Love lemon pepper. And last but not least, Chipotle or Cava?
oh, that's tough. Wow, that's tough. Man, I'm gonna go Chipotle, but that's tough.
Chipotle superior, that's a good option.
Yeah, I think coffee can get expensive. I love their bowls, but every now and then I crave like the hard shell tacos. And I like guacamole.
All right, thank you for answering those. Mallom, to kick things off, let's talk about your early career. Prior to working in sports, you were in the business sector. When did you realize there was an opportunity to have a career in sports?
That's a great question, Sydney. So just give you some background. I'm from Hollis, Queens. So, I'm so New York, and my thought process coming up was I want money because I didn't have money. So that's what got me to the business sector. If you think every day a fox and a rabbit get up, right? And they engage with each other, right? But they have different motivations. That fox chases the rabbit for a meal, and the rabbit runs for its life. So I started off in business because I was running for the meal. I thought that would bring me joy. And what happened was the quote, Puff Daddy, more money, more problems. It just, I got more money, but it didn't necessarily bring me joy. And so when I sat down and reflected about what is it that would make me feel like I'm running for my life? Because the rabbit gets away more than the fox catches it, right? So in my mind, that's a win. I started paying attention to my behaviors because your behaviors will teach you more than your values. And here's what I noticed. I was getting the Business Investor Daily and the Wall Street Journal because that's what you did when you worked on Wall Street. You got in the train, you got that paper. But I was barely reading them. It was more performative, if you will. Coming back on the train, though, I was grabbing the Post, right, the Daily News, and the Newsday, and I was reading the sports section. And so I knew right there that regardless of what I was telling the world, right, but my values were, my behaviors were leading me toward media and for sports. That's what always fed my soul. So at some point, I decided to go ahead and make that jump and move over from that. And I moved down from New York City to Atlanta and started working in media.
That's an awesome lesson about chasing your passions, although the money might be there, but you're not really doing what you love and just taking that leap of faith. So within your current role, you're able to work with a variety of departments across the TNT Sports portfolio, which consists of premium brands and professional leagues. What does your day-to-day look like?
So I have a non-traditional role, so I don't come and sit down and go 9 to 5 and move to that. I've never thought of myself as someone that's doing widgets or checking boxes or, falling off a list, which by the way, we need people like that. I think of myself as creating value, right? So to answer your question about my day to day, when I wake up and after I give thanks for God opening my eyes, I began thinking about three things: the partners that we engage with, our fans that consume our content, and the employees, our staff, our team, and how do they feel? It's at the intersectionality of those three things is where we find huge success. So I work hard to strengthen that connection and then help us all mutually extract value from it. Does that make sense? And how that looks changes day to day. It may be taking meetings where you're mentoring for a while, right? But by mentoring, you're gaining tremendous ideas from the employee staff that I can bring back and apply toward the business. It may be reaching out to the community and going and spending time at schools with students and have them engage with our content. And they're radically honest, right? So they'll tell you your stuff stinks, or they'll tell you this is great, and they'll tell you why. And sometimes their why is right, or sometimes their why points you in a direction where you can sort of validate and learn other things. And then there are times when I'm looking at numbers, like I look at ratings, performance numbers, indicators, things like that, and then see what they're telling me. I do an analysis of things. And an analysis is really just two things, right? It's teasing out repeatable occurrences from anomalies. That's all that really is, right? So if you can look at numbers and see this repeatable occurrence, you're like, okay, now I can leverage that, right? Or I can sort of plan for that. And then you can respond or react to that. When you talk about anomalies, you're looking at, whoa, this could happen. It's not likely to happen, but it's probable, right? I mean, there's a chance it could happen. Then I'll pad for that. And then bringing those strategies to the forefront, that's how I begin to create value and help our business.
Outside of your role, you spend a lot of time giving back and helping others enhance their leadership skills.
Mhm.
What are some habits you found to be the most vital for professional growth?
So let's talk about the three metrics of professional growth, and then we can talk about the habits that will feed that, okay? So there are three metrics that I sort of look at. The first metric is one of the pretty low-hanging fruit. It's obvious. It's your IQ, right? How do you sort of enhance that? Good news is if you're born with a pretty high IQ, you have a pretty high IQ. Bad news is if you're born with a pretty low IQ, you have a pretty low IQ, right? But you can optimize it, right? And so in the IQ bucket, I'm looking at ways that we increase the way we think, keep our mind fresh. How do we learn? Are we constantly reading and moving? I heard something one day on a panel and it changed my life. It's most of the CEOs raised their hands and asked them how many books they're reading a year. And the lowest person on that panel said 30. So I was like, let me shift up my reading habits, right? And sometimes I'm picking up a book, sometimes it's an Audible, I'll be honest, or sometimes it's just publication, but making sure that you're keeping your IQ, keeping fresh, keeping your knowledge base going, keeping that. That's one of the first things that I talk to leaders about. I try to practice myself and I try to push on to everyone on this call. You have to stay hot in the game, right? You have to be prepared. You have to have your act together. The second thing is EQ, right? So IQ, where it's intellectual quotient, right? It's your emotional quotient, right? What's your emotional intelligence look like? Good news about emotional intelligence is that that number can move, right? IQs barely move 1 or 2 standard deviations, but the EQ can go greatly. You can go from just a horrible person to a really decent human being by just practicing things like empathy and listening and caring and belonging and all the things that you would think about, seeking understanding, not being right or wrong, like looking at those factors of emotional intelligence and really working hard to practice that. How do you engage with the people around you? How do you resolve conflict? How do you take feedback? Do you react to things or do you respond to things? When something happens, did it happen to you or for you? These are choices, right? And all of those choices and how you manage that is a factor of your emotional quotient. Here's the other good news about emotional quotient. One is if it's low, you can grow it. You could today look up emotional intelligence or Google something, read about it, and start growing your emotional quotient. The second good news about that is it is the most predictive measure of success. And here's the third one, and it is not as known as the other two, but there are some studies coming along on that. And that's QI. That's your quantitative intuition. But if you find yourself outside of the norm, generally you've had to operate differently and you probably, without realizing it, built up your quantitative intuition. That's that, like spider senses, your sixth sense. How do you move in the world? How do you do like that? Those type of things. Those three things are really predictive of strong success in business. You marry that with a good product, and then you have something going.
That allows everyone on the call to gain a new perspective when it comes to professional development and just learning new things.
Yeah. If you're just looking at data and you're saying, okay, I want this number to this rating to go higher in our business where, we may look at Nielsen television ratings, right? And I want these ratings higher. You're just looking at, and that's all you're caring about is IQ, right? How do we get these numbers up? You're going to be very limited in your opportunities and things that you find. But if you began thinking about, well, what about the people watching us? What would they like? And then you remember that, I'm probably in this business because I was a fan once too. Now suddenly ideas start opening up for you. Things you've never thought of can open up, right? And then if you start using your intuition, like that number is high, but it seems wrong. It likely is wrong. There's something about every single person on this call. And if you leave this call knowing this, I feel like, wow, I've done my job, Sydnee. But there's something about each and every one on this call that makes you special, makes you more amazing than you ever could imagine. Sydnee, I just want everyone to call this up just to think about these two questions I'm going to ask. One is, what percentage of your body is water? Just stop and think about that for a second, right? And then once you think about it, you're going to be, I've heard 70, 80, 90%, something like that, right? The next question you would have to ask yourself is, how old is water? So just those two thoughts get you to change your perspective about how you show up in this world. If you think I'm young, I'm new in my business, I'm 24, 25, 26, but really 70% of you is somewhere close to 6 to 8 billion years old, right? You realize how incredibly special we really are. And all that knowledge is actually in us to tap. And because we don't fully understand how it works, doesn't mean we can't take the what's that it gives us. And that's quantitative intuition. So I want us all to know that you have the ability to change this world and do so much more if you just shift your perspective of how you look at the world.
What is one piece of advice you wish someone would have given you when you first started your career that you can share with us now?
Oh boy, I got this late in my career, but it was helpful. And here's the piece of advice. No one, except maybe your mama, is going to hire you for how badly you want a job. Generally, you'll get a job for how badly the person wants you. And Steve Koonin, who now is with the Hawks, was actually the president of TBS and TNT. And I'll never forget this. He got up and he was like, he had this new discovery. So, clap my hands for him. But Black people are watching the NBA. Yay, let's all clap our hands. And then he was like, hey, we're going to start marketing to them. And I'm sitting in the audience and I'm like, zero marketing experience, by the way. I walk up to him at the end of the meeting and I say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And he goes, yeah. I go, I think I can help you market the NBA. I'm Black and I love the NBA. And I went on for the next 5 minutes that he gave me, telling him how badly I wanted the job, how I knew every player, what it meant to me. I told him some story about how I grew up and all the story that I had to tell him and got him all impressed. And he was like, that's a nice story. Have a nice day. And he left. And then I looked at him and I said, I forgot to tell you one more thing. 20% of your audience gives you 80% of your rating. And of that 20%, 60% of that is African American, which means if you gave me that job, I would take just a small percentage of the budget that you're spending right now, and I would apply that toward that 60% of that 20%. And I would give you a return of watching one Black person watching your NBA game is like 8 white men watching it. And I would put all my money right there that you won't see the marketing at all because it won't go towards you, it would only go toward that community and your ratings would grow. And I said, don't you think that's fascinating? He goes, no one's ever told me that. And I said, right, now who's running your marketing now? And he said, I don't know, I'll find out. 2 days later, came over. I never applied for that job. And I went no marketing at all, went over and got marketing. And I remember 4 months later, I'm sitting in a limo with him and Jeff Greger, who was the chief marketing officer at the time. And we're riding in the car and I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm thanking them like, wow, thank you for this opportunity. I was in research. I wanted to get to marketing. I never know how I can do this. And he said, you almost screwed it up. And I said, did? He goes, yeah. He goes, you keep thinking someone's going to hire you because you want the job and much you love basketball. He says, we really don't care about that. The reason why you're here is not because we like you. We're here because we like what you do for us. See, people hire, especially nowadays, the way they find their mates when they get married. You don't hire the person you can work with, you hire the person you can't work without. And the way you make yourself that valuable is you think about what can you bring to the table to the business, not just what I want. That's the advice I would give young people now, because everyone's coming into the table and everyone has one of these. I'm pulling up an iPhone, but that power is there, right? So you have a very powerful tool in front of you and you have Google. So now IQ is really not a thing, right? You can go to ChatGPT and I'll answer everything you wanted to answer right now. And now your Harvard education can kind of go in the bucket of water right there, right? So what do we do now? Right? How do I differentiate myself? That's when you have to lean in on those other two things, because EQ says, tell Steve Koonin would he help fulfill his need, not how much you love something, how much he needs you. And quantitative intuition says, you look to a fan base that no one else is looking to and draw that to bring growth. That's the advice I would give young people now. Each and every one of the people on this call has the ability to do that. They take a minute and ask themselves, not just what do I want to do, but they introduce themselves as, hi, I'm Sydnee, and here's what I can do for others. When you can answer that question, you can change the world.
That's an incredible perspective and an amazing story about how you're able to provide value. I know a lot of us get caught up in, oh, I really want this job, but just shifting that perspective to, hey, here's what I can do for you. So thank you for sharing that. Mallom, thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. It's always a pleasure hearing from you. I loved all the perspective you provided for everyone tonight, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Go ahead and change the world, everybody.